Welcome to this meeting of the Board of Education. This meeting is being televised live on AACPS TV and streamed on AACPS's YouTube channel. General information and protocols for the meeting are posted on the sign by the doorway as you enter the room. So please make sure that you read those if you have not already done so. At this time, we'll have our invocation. O God, we pray to administer that which is just in all educational policies. Being ever mindful of your guidance, stir us to action with love, wisdom, and understanding. And now for our Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we are now at item 2.03, approval of the minutes. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve the minutes is written.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We have consensus. And we do. Thank you. Item 2.04, establish the agenda order. Do we have a motion?
Motion to establish agenda order is printed.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. Do we have consensus? We do. Okay, so we're moving on to item 3, public comments on agenda items. It's my understanding we do not have any testimony from anyone on agenda items. So we'll move on to item 4.0 reports, 4.01 policy committee report.
Thank you. Yesterday, the policy committee had our first meeting of the school year. And we dug right in with 3 policies. Policy AC, non-discrimination, was reviewed with just a little language left based on law, and that will be that was approved to bring to the board, which I believe would be at our next meeting. Policy DI, technology use and security. That's a policy that frequently should be looked at because of advances in technology. A couple of minor edits to that policy will come before the board. The big changes come in the regulations, again, with all the advances that take place in technology. But just not to confuse this with student laptop use or other devices. This policy is not dealing with those issues. And then policy KH, parent, family, community involvement. This is a policy, I believe, that was last updated in 2004. This came before the policy committee with some requested edits that the policy committee considered. There was some discussion and some questions about some of the language. So the policy committee chose to review again in our next meeting, which will be October 1st. So this policy was held until the following policy committee. And then we reviewed the regulations for the technology use and security. And that was.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis. And so we're moving on to item 4.02, the president's report. So, beginning of a new school year. Many of my fellow board members and I had the opportunity over the last few weeks to attend some ribbon cuttings at three beautiful new school facilities: Old Mill Middle School South, Severn Run High School, and Two Rivers Elementary School. What struck me about all three of these new schools is the amount of natural light that is incorporated into these buildings. They are absolutely beautiful environments for our students to learn in. We should not forget that combined, they represent nearly $298 million in investment in our future on the part of the state and the county. And we thank everyone that played any role in that. I will say that one of the special moments for me at those ribbon cuttings came at Severn Run High School, where Principal Rachel Kennelly opened the event by paying tribute to the Wade and Schillinger families who operated Papa John's Farm on the site for more than 100 years. Members of the family were on hand to hear Ms. Kennelly announce that the driveway to the school has been appropriately named Wade Schillinger Way in their honor. It was truly a special moment, and the family received a standing ovation from the more than 1,000 people in attendance. And then, of course, I and many of my fellow board members had the opportunity to visit many schools with Dr. Bedell last week, and we do have more visits this week. It was great to see the energy in our buildings. I mentioned earlier about the fact that it was great to have ribbon cuttings for the three absolutely marvelous schools that have been planned, designed, and built and paid for by our taxpayers. We're grateful for that. But what strikes me also, and I have to be so thankful for, is the fact that even though I saw great brick and mortar, what I saw, which was much more important than that, was excitement on the part of students and staff and communities about coming back for the 2024 and 25 school year. We are a good school system. I have to say, though, and I've said it before, we have some great students and staff and families and communities, and I am so proud to be a part of that. So that does conclude my report, and we'll move on to item 4.03, the superintendent's report. Dr. Bedell.
Hey, thank you, President Silkworth. It was indeed a great week visiting schools. In addition to the three ribbon cuttings that were already mentioned, I had the opportunity to get into 21 of our schools in the first 5 days of the school year, and I have 6 more school visits planned this week. This is my 9th year opening up a school district as a superintendent. And I just, I have to be honest with everybody. This has been the best opening I have experienced, generally from a staffing standpoint, an energy standpoint, as Mr. Silkworth mentioned, but also the focus of what I saw when I went into schools. Even on the first day, we saw folks at the lower elementary level getting involved in engaging in our CKLA curriculum. What I also heard from teachers is that they feel really good about this new literacy curriculum focused on science for reading. And the fact that it's just very easy for them to navigate the resources, which ultimately reduces workload concerns that we've been trying to attack since I arrived. The same can be said for Reveal Math. Again, if anybody has seen some of the press releases, generally when you implement a brand new curriculum, you generally will experience what is called an implementation dip. But in the excitement from last year, and we've heard this when I went into schools, people were excited about Reveal. And as a result, our school district was in the top 3 across the state in growth on the MCAPs. But also number 1 in the Baltimore region. So that says a lot about implementing a new curriculum and then still being able to make progress. And then also from a cell phone standpoint, we've been going into schools and I've been taking a look. And for the most part, I've been pleased so far in the vast majority of our schools. Yes, I will be very honest with this board and this community. There's a school or two that I had some concerns on, but as staff, we're working with those schools to also support them because if we don't get a hold on this early on, it's going to be a rough year. And I've been very clear that we will come back after 6 weeks and make a determination on if we need to stay the course or we need to make adjustments. So that's kind of where we are on that one. I also want to thank the leaders outside our system who joined us last week. I was pleased to have State Superintendent Dr. Carrie Wright and State Board President Dr. Joshua Michael open the school year with us on Monday at Tyler Heights Elementary School. We also had County Police Chief Amar Awad with us at Central and Davisonville Elementary Schools, and Fort Meade's new commander, Colonel Yolanda Gore, joined us at Meade High School and Meade Middle School. I appreciate their partnership and collaboration in helping all of our students to belong, grow, and succeed. Speaking of succeeding, congratulations to Arnold Elementary School fifth grader Johan Zachariah for earning the national championship out of 959 entries in the elementary school division of the Invest Right essay competition, the culminating activity to the stock market game. The program is utilized in schools across the United States and organized locally by the Maryland Council on Economic Education. Johan's work detailed what he learned from his experience in the stock market game, discussed which investment in his portfolio performed the best, and provided a recommendation on future hypothetical investment. So this kid is now, I believe, in the fifth grade. And I plan on getting some advice to him because the last 2 days I've looked at my portfolio and it's been in the red. I'm not doing something right. I'm really not. And I thought I invested wisely, but yeah, my wife, man, I said that publicly. She don't even know. All right. There was some phenomenal news over the last few weeks with regard to advanced placement and MCAP scores. For the third straight year, we saw increases in the average score of students taking AP exams, the number of students taking AP exams, and the percentage of students scoring a 3 or higher on the exams. We've gone back, I believe, to 2020, I believe is the furthest we've gone back. And this is the first time as a district, our average AP scores is over a 3-point rating, a 3.03, which is on average a passing score that generally is accepted by colleges and universities across the state. As I've stated to you all earlier, usually when enrollment goes up, and remember, we've given access to a lot more students, scores tend to go down. That has been a trend that I have seen in a number of districts that I've worked in, but this has not been the case with us in Anne Arundel County, and that's a testament to our students, families, and support staff who are taking these opportunities seriously. But again, it also demonstrates that we have students with the academic aptitude to not only enroll into these courses, but they also are strong enough to pass these courses given the access. So I'm really proud of the work that we're doing. There was also good news on the MCAP data, English, language arts, and math released last week by the Maryland State Department of Education. I want to be clear that we still have a lot of work to do with regard to the number of students who are proficient at each level. That said, the increases in our proficiency rates were the highest in the Baltimore region. They also placed us third in the state in English language arts and fourth in the state in math. The English language arts results also show significant reductions in proficiency gaps, particularly with regard to African-American students when compared to all students. In that category, gaps were reduced by 1.2 percentage points at the elementary level, 2.1 percentage points at the middle school level, and 2.3 percentage points at the high school level. But that also is a testament, as I've said before, that there is no lowering of the bar to close gaps. All of our kids are moving in the right direction, and we're able to use these resources that are being allocated to some of our schools where the free and reduced lunch percentages, the ELL and the special education numbers are higher, and we're seeing returns on it. The data speaks for itself. However, our science scores did decrease. It did decrease. And I'm always about transparency. I'm not going to sit here and paint a picture that we're rosy in every area when we aren't. But so did the scores across the state. There were double-digit drops in 5th grade science scores across the state, and Anne Arundel County also experienced double-digit drops. All of us as superintendents are taking a hard look at this issue, including a possible misalignment between the MCAP assessment and the curriculum. I saw data like this drop in a previous state, and when we dug deeper, we ultimately realized that it was a form error. I don't know that that's the case here, but I don't want our teachers to feel defeated that they're not doing a good job when you see these kind of drops across the state. But also, it's important for this community to understand that when we don't have access to item analysis data, it is hard to pinpoint where the problem is. And I'm a very prescriptive, data-oriented superintendent. That data is critical, but that's also why I know our new state superintendent is working on a new assessment task force to take a deep look at the assessments in this state. Finally, I want to update everybody on our vacancies. Our teacher vacancies remain far lower than we've seen in the past, even before the pandemic. These numbers are amazing. What is concerning is the vacancies in food and nutrition services, where the numbers are back over 120. We need to take a long, hard look at this issue, and I am already having conversations about it with leaders in our school system, union leadership, and ultimately, I plan to have some discussions with the school board when we go back into closed session today to talk about some thoughts that we have on how we can address this issue. And so there's a lot of hope that we can get this taken care of. And then I will continue to work with our relationship with the police department as we look at crossing guards. Mr. President, that concludes the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Dr. Bedell. I did want to make one comment about the crossing guard, which is at 43 and maybe down to 41. 47. Okay. I don't want the public out there to think that these are not being covered. So it's important for everyone out there to understand that even though we're showing 47 crossing guards, there are all of these places are being covered at this time. So we have a couple of lights. Dr. Tobin.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your report, Dr. Bedell. I too enjoyed this. I visited 6 schools, I think, with you last week, and starting the week with the state superintendent and the chair of the state board was wonderful to see what's going on at Tyler Heights. So that was fabulous. I have a couple of questions for you. You've already mentioned the food service workers. As you and I toured a number of the Annapolis area schools, we really saw significant deficiencies in staffing. And as I've often said, and you and I have often discussed, it's a concern whenever we have deficiencies in staffing, but it is a particular concern to me when we do not have enough food service workers, because often the children who are most impacted by that are students who are most vulnerable. And so I just would reiterate, I'm glad to hear we'll be having some discussion, but to make sure that that's a priority and we continue to hear more. And obviously, certainly for myself, and I'm sure my colleagues, any additional support we can offer to advocate for additions there, I'm certainly happy to do so. The other thing I wanted to mention, there's obviously been, you sent communication at the end of the first week, which I think was very welcome, but I know there were some unexpected numbers that emerged when doing the, when evaluating all the Chromebooks. Can you perhaps speak a little to kind of where we are with that and how we're going to proceed?
Yeah, so I'll ask Mr. Borkowski to come up here and he can provide an update. But what I can tell you is we did send out communication notifying the community that our goals were to ensure that loaner devices were going to be available for families that are in need towards the end of the month of September. We did provide some data at the opening of school presentation where we shared with the community the number of devices that were returned, the number of devices that were damaged, and what we were going to be doing to distribute those carts to schools. So Mr. Borkowski can kind of give an update on where we are at this point.
Good afternoon. For the record, Mike Burkowski, Chief Information Officer. As Dr. Bedell explained, we received more devices back damaged than what we had anticipated. Between damaged devices and missing devices, over 42% of our allocations. That's hard to recover from. We're in the process of fixing a lot of the damaged Chromebooks. Some of those have been damaged beyond repair. In addition, we also bought additional Chromebooks with end-of-year funds, and we're also in the process right now of purchasing more Chromebooks and carts for classrooms. The ultimate goal, of course, is to have a cart of at least 24, if not 30 Chromebooks in every core classroom. Also, carts in schools for moving around as well. We also have additional laptop computers that are in schools that weren't really being used when students had Chromebooks one-to-one, only in areas where, a laptop was needed for a specific program like Project Lead Away or something like that. So we're in the process right now of rolling devices out to schools. Again, as Dr. Bedell stated, the goal is at the end of the month, and that's about it at this point.
But I think it's also important to note that we have had conversations with our building administrators, because we did send out communication articulating that if students don't have a device, we cannot assign homework that's going to require kids to utilize the devices. And I know that has also been reiterated with our building administrators to share with faculty and staff members, because it creates an inequity.
So just to follow up, thank you very much for that. And I know that's a lot to recover from. Just to reiterate, I mean, obviously, if we're talking about the end of the month, there are courses like many AP courses, for example, where things are essentially online. So is there a mechanism for getting kids through that first month?
Are you talking about home devices or devices in schools?
Well, that's twofold, right? Often the textbooks are literally online, and so there's a need to have access to that. And then on top of it, there's just, I know the preparation at this point for most teachers in AP requires a lot of online access. So all of that, I guess.
We've been working a lot with the content coordinators to make sure that their areas are covered. One of the things I did not mention, and this did not go out in any kind of memo to the public, was we partnered at the end of last year with the Anne Arundel County Community Library to be able to distribute over 700 Chromebooks to families in need. So, and that was done, over the summer, because it was part of a larger grant the county had received. And that grant was really targeted for adults over the age of 18, but we were able to work with them to be able to get over 700 devices in the hands of our students and our families.
Okay, but I know we talked about prioritizing AP
We did.
courses, right?
We did.
So I think that's the question at this point. Where are we with those classes, making sure that they have those devices?
No, we're rolling them out to the schools. And again, we're working
Okay.
directly with the content coordinators to make sure that we have those allocations done. Ms. Catalano, who's not here today, we've worked to make sure that we're focusing right now on our high schools and then our middle schools downstream. So again, to make sure that the areas are covered.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Crocodile.
Thank you, President Silkworth. I gotta say, Dr. Bedell, I was prepared to make a statement. I really, really enjoyed the visit that Chief Awad participated in. It was in my district. And when we were at one of our schools, elementary schools, we did have the opportunity to connect briefly on the number that was reported a couple weeks ago for our school opening. And I was left with the impression that the number was drastically lower of what was still needed. And then I looked at our report here, and because I said to her, I says, Well, if the number is not stagnant and the number has improved to what she had reported to me, then I want to say something in public. And now I'm looking at the number and I'm a little confused because I know they're working so very hard, and I always want to make sure that any identified concern or hiccup that we have along the way does not discount the hard work. And so can you talk about when we got what number we're using off of, how current it was, and how we obtained it? Because what was explained to me was that the number reported at the beginning of the summer was the number that we saw in August, and that they have made great strides in the recruiting. So can you please?
Yes.
Help me here.
So I know that this is a conversation that I will need to have with the chief, but I had requested staff to make those changes. I know that there are a number of people in training. Now, it's my understanding, based on what we know, a number of those sites are still being covered by police officers. So
It must be a train. It sounds like
Yeah,
a training number.
yeah, but I
Okay.
can't report and
Gotcha.
put accurate numbers out here until I know for certain that those people are not people that are being paid overtime to cover or whatever it may be, or they're being shifted to cover. And at least from what my team shared with me, that's what it sounds like. So that's the reason why I needed to make sure the report reflected accurate numbers.
Well, thank you very much. What I'm wondering if we could do, because it is, we want to, I think it's important that that we publicly demonstrate our progress when progress is happening. And so when we were facing our most critical months of the driver shortage, one of the things that we did do is demonstrate how many were in training. In other words, how many's in the pipeline. And we even did this with teachers when our numbers were into the hundreds as opposed to over 100. And because it helps, I think, it helps put it in perspective, number one, and also recognizes what is happening.
Okay. Okay.
Just a suggestion, because really, the folks that are working on this, they're doing everything they can within the resources that they're provided to provide. And just an extra call out, all those coverages that you're seeing, shy, maybe, under a dozen of those sites are because our officers care enough about their communities. And so they may not be doing it in the district that they work in. They may work out of the Northern Division, but in their home elementary school, they're performing the job on their way home after their 7 a.m. shifts, after working all night. So I just want to recognize that our children are safe, but we do need the community to come up here and help us as we to ensure the safety of our kids. It has to be paramount. And then one more thing, Dr. Bedell, I know we have our these results, as you pointed out. I share your frustration that we don't have the right level of disaggregated data that we need to be the most successful. And so I'm wondering, however, because we do have an integrated education system as it relates to students who are receiving special instruction in the main classroom. And I remember being reported in past years, of course, thankfully, we're earlier in the season. I need to call that out.
That's
like
true.
We used to be well into the fall and winter
That's correct.
on these conversations when it was too late for the kids and to do anything with. And but is there a way that is there any disaggregated data that would help our teams help those students even more to overcome those challenges as we are faced with new literacy policies and such? Everybody wants that and wants that success, but we know that success looks different, and the path to get the success looks different, because not especially, I think, parents whose students do receive specialized instruction, whether it's a speech pathologist all the way up to a full IEP, I do think that there's a little bit of hesitation to celebrate. And so do we have any data separate from these scores to demonstrate the progress we are having with that particular student group?
Yeah, I mean, I think we desegregate all of that data and we take a look at individual student groups on all of these assessments. And I know when we do our deep data dive, we'll be able to share all of that information with you all in the community. I know we do a workshop on it. And so that's where, once everything is released, we'll be able to talk about what those gaps look like. But the evidence I can provide to you is, I mean, it's really around the whole redesign of what we're doing in specialized education services. I mean, those of you who went to the conference this year, this was our first year doing that. We are far better staffed right now than we've been in a long time as it pertains to specialized education. We're piloting, we're bringing some newness, and I think we'll be able to give you an update on that. Even with our ECI program, I think this is the first year that we've ever put together ECI 4-year-old program that's full day. So we're piloting things, we're trying some different things that we think will hopefully provide better outcomes for our students socially, emotionally, and academically. And I do have to credit Mary Talar and her team for, I think, really setting a different trajectory around how we're going to look at specialized services in this school district. And that's just not on the special education side. It's also on the gifted and talented side. There are some things we're piloting now, 3 and 4th grade math at a high level. So we're looking at this point, revamping the entire spectrum, not just the kids in the middle, you know, the kids that receive general education services. We're going to look at that bell curve and we're going to serve kids on both sides of that bell curve properly in this county.
Thank you. I bring that up because, you know, as we establish our budget priorities, this is priority season in the budget cycle. It's already started. I think it's important for us to know where those progresses are and where we need to better support by way of resources and make sure that we're having that community conversation early before we get to January so that all the folks who are involved in the funding decisions have a good understanding of what the true needs are so that we can continue to make progress across the board and not create new cracks and crevices along the way.
All right, and I know before we go to the next question, I did want to just acknowledge, I know we have another person in here that was on tours with us, Christina Corona, who's our new union president. She got to see firsthand some of the things we're dealing with from a staffing standpoint with food and nutrition services, but also just seeing where teachers are and where we are as a school district. So I just wanted to thank you for being a part of that because I think it helps with perspective shaping around the realities of the things that we all need to work together to fight towards and how do we work together to advocate properly. And these are conversations that she and I have already started having.
Yeah, and when one group is down, it hinders and sets behind everyone. So I think that's important to note too, that as a team, we are only as good as our weakest in performance. So I love the direction that we're going. Thank you very much, Dr. Bedell. Thank you, President.
Ms. Frank.
Yes, thank you. Dr. Bedell, you mentioned Ms. Talar and a few others, and I want to add my thanks there as well. There have been at the beginning of the year, there's so many constituent concerns that come in, and a lot of times when I reach back, because they've written to me, they've already engaged in the process. But when I ask, could we please follow up on this? By the time, I get it to Ms. Howell checks into it, it's already been resolved in a lot of cases. And staff has just done a tremendous job of really getting through a volume of, beginning of year concerns, transportation. As I mentioned last time, Dr. Heiser, you've just done a tremendous job on constituent services there. So I really want to thank all of the staff who has just worked incredibly diligently. And I feel like this year is more, for some reason, more constituent outreach than normal. But I mean, it's just been a tremendous job, and I'm very thankful and grateful for that. To the Chromebooks, I would just like to add, I mean, we got Chromebooks because of a pandemic. That is no longer a problem, especially in middle school and elementary school. If we no longer need them, I mean, I am all on board with going back to paper and pencil, as many of you might imagine. And children are exposed to technology plenty because of our society, and the technology that they're using today will be completely irrelevant by the time those younger kids graduate. So I would just like to throw that out there.
All right. Well, thank you. And I do want to, yeah, thank you on that one. Look, Mike is like, yeah, please. All right. The heat on. But let me say this. To your point, you raise a good point, and I do want to say this publicly. I am committed, and I shared this with some of your elected officials on trying to figure out this Mountain Road situation. And I want to say that publicly. I know we're looking into everything that we could possibly do to try to help alleviate some of the traffic that's really creating a nightmare out there for your community. And I don't want you to think that we're not actively working on it, but I wanted to say it publicly.
Thank you, everyone. Ms. Hamdawi, did you have, your light was on?
My question was resolved. Thank you very much.
There you go. Okay, so thank you, Dr. Bedell. I guess I will conclude this by simply saying that when I was in many of the classrooms, and I made this comment, one would have thought that classes had been in session for more than a month based upon what was happening, being student engagement, students getting along, the learning that was taking place. And it was only the first couple days. And so that speaks so highly of our great students and our great staff. And remember what I say, the first few weeks is about building relationships. That's well underway. I would suggest that everyone continue to be collaborative, be cooperative, but be consistent. Particularly when we're talking about the electronic devices. We had the opportunity to have lunch with a few students and sit down and talk to them. And I did ask them their thoughts about the electronic device situation. And the comment was, it's going to take us a little bit to get used to it. However, we understand the need for that. And our students always rise to the level of our expectations. And in any visit that I had, I don't remember seeing one issue with the cell phone. So we are off to a great school year. There's a lot of excitement that's going to continue.
Can I say something, Mr. Silkworth?
Certainly can, Dr.
Because I
Bedell.
think this is important. So I visited Arundel High School. We walk into the cafeteria. I already knew what was getting ready to happen. One, I wanted to learn what's the new terminology that I should be using. I mean, my understanding is fleek is not on fleek is not a thing anymore. So they gave me some. Yeah, it's old. They gave me some new terminology that I can use to relate to the current high school students. But one of the things I knew was coming was why are you requiring us to change the cell phone guidelines? And it was the first school that I said, okay, they didn't come at me in this very inappropriate way. They were sincere about it. And I said, listen, I only have you all for 19.3% of the week. I'm asking to have 100% of you for that 19.3% of the time that we have you. There's not a lot of time to make sure that you guys are being educated properly. And to me, these cell phones are distractors. How many hours do you spend on your cell phone going into rabbit holes because you keep looking for different things that ultimately become, and it becomes an interference to you being able to focus. These kids actually understood what I was saying because we talked about Instagram and going down that hole, and you see one video, then you keep clicking. Next thing you know, you 2 hours in, you still got a paper to write. You still have math to do. And so talking to the kids, I think they understood, and ultimately it resulted in, I thought, a very positive visit in the cafeteria with those students. So again, my message will be, and I think all of our messages should be when you all are approached as a board, administratively, as a staff, we only have you 19.3% of the week. we need that full-blown 19.3% to focus on your social, emotional, and academic development in Anne Arundel County Public Schools.
Thank you, Dr. Bedell. Ms. Ellis.
Yes, thank you for that, Dr. Bedell. And I just wanted to piggyback a little bit on the Arundel visit. So going back to the days of Pokemon Go when it was like really big, I remember walking around downtown Annapolis and I felt like it was the zombie apocalypse. There were zombies walking down the street is what it felt like. We walked into that cafeteria at Arundel, one of the short windows they have to have access to their phones, and there were no zombies in the cafeteria. These kids were fully interacting. I saw very little cell phone use in that time. So yeah, the importance of face-to-face connection is huge, and it seems that they still value that.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis. Okay, we're moving on to item 5.01, our fiscal year 2026 capital budget and 6-year capital improvement plan.
So I know that this will just be a 5-minute or less overview for the board. It is important for the board and community to know that we will have a actual board workshop on this capital budget and capital improvement plan on September 16th. Pass it over to our staff.
Good afternoon. For the record, Bill Heiser, Chief Operating Officer.
Kyle Ruff, Director of Facilities.
Good afternoon, President Silkworth, members of the board, Dr. Bedell. For the record, I will be providing a very preliminary but high-level overview of the proposed fiscal year 2026 capital budget. I am excited to say that I knew something was different this morning when I woke up, because I think we're kicking off the budget season. It's a long season, longer than the NFL season. So we beat the operating, we beat the operating budget side to the table, and we're excited to share just some preliminary things up front with you. You've been provided the superintendent's proposed FY26 capital budget, the 6-year plan, and the state capital improvement plan, also known as the CIP. The proposed FY26 capital budget totals $204.7 million. The recommendation is in priority order, as you see in front of you and on the screen. The top 5 priorities within this budget are in the areas of health and safety at $1.2 million, upgrading our security-related areas for $2 million, renovating our building systems, also known as systemics, for $32.9 million, reducing the maintenance backlog for $8 million, and replacing our roofs at $6 million. It contains construction funding for 3 major school projects. Nearly 60% of this recommendation, $119.8 million, is allocated to construction funding for a new Center of Applied Technology North, CAT North, a new Old Mill High School, and a new Old Mill Middle School North. And they represent, as you all know, the final pieces of the Old Mill feeder system project that has been long in the works. It also includes $9.2 million in construction for a new school bus facility and lot around the same location in Millersville. This budget also includes $5 million for kindergarten, pre-kindergarten additions, and $4 million for other classroom additions. And it also contains $4 million for athletic stadium improvements. You see the list in priority order there, which is very similar to last year's order. Lastly, you've been provided the recommended 6-year capital improvement plan, which allocates requested funding for projects through 2031. Now, on September the 16th, we'll hold a public workshop. Mr. Roof and I will have the opportunity to go and exhaust an entire presentation around the capital budget and around this plan with a PowerPoint presentation to share with you and the public. Again, that'll be on September 16th. That'll be followed by a public board meeting on the 18th, on that Wednesday. And you all know this, but after approval of the board, the plan will be submitted to the state of Maryland for funding consideration, and it'll be a part of the overall system's FY26 budget request that'll be moved forward to the county executive in February of 2025. So once again, we look forward to providing you even greater exhaustive information in just a couple of weeks. And that'll conclude our remarks, and we're certainly here to answer any preliminary questions that you may have. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no lights, we thank you so much. Yes, the budget season is beginning.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're moving on to item 6.01, 6.02. Do I have a motion to bundle?
Motion to bundle 6.01 and 6.02.
Second.
Okay, do we have consensus? We do. Okay. Dr. Bedell.
Thank you, Mr. President. The superintendent recommends that the Board of Education authorize the award of the contracts noted on the consent item 6.01 and 6.02.
So moved. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? Okay, Ms. Howe.
Ms. Corkadell,
Aye.
Ms. Schallheim,
Aye.
Ms. Dent,
Aye.
Ms. Hamdowie,
Aye.
Dr. Tobin,
Aye.
Ms. Ellis,
Aye.
Mr. Silkworth.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, so we're going to be moving on to items 7.01, administrative personnel appointments. Dr. Bedell.
Mr. President, the superintendent recommends that the personnel listed on the attached sheet be promoted and or appointed as discussed in executive close.
So moved. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none. Ms. Howe.
Ms. Corkadell,
Aye.
Ms. Schallheim,
Aye.
Ms. Dent,
Aye.
Ms. Hamdowie,
Aye.
Dr. Tobin,
Aye.
Ms. Ellis,
Aye.
Mr. Silkworth.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, item 7.02, personnel. Dr. Bedell.
Thank you. The superintendent recommends that the board approve the actions as stipulated on the attached sheets.
So moved. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing no lights. Ms. Howe.
Ms. Corkadell,
Aye.
Ms. Schallheim,
Aye.
Ms. Dent,
Aye.
Ms. Hamdowie,
Aye.
Dr. Tobin,
Aye.
Ms. Ellis,
Aye.
Mr. Silkworth.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, so now we're going to be moving on to some policy revisions. Third reading, starting out with item 7.03, Representative Student Leadership Code JCA. Ms. Wilson.
All right, let me go ahead and do the recommendation, and then we'll have Ms. Wilson to take us through it. The superintendent recommends approval of policy JCA, Representative Student Leadership, subject to final correction in style for format.
So
Pass vote.
moved. Second.
Thank you, Dr. Bedell. Good afternoon, Mr. Silkworth, members of the board, and Dr. Bedell. As you're aware, policy JCA, Representative Student Leadership, is before you this afternoon on third reading. This policy establishes structures for representative student leadership programs in AACPS. The policy was last revised in 2014 and is being updated for style and formatting and other minor revisions. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions you may have.
Okay, I'm seeing no lights, no questions. So, Ms. Howe.
Ms. Corkadell,
Aye.
Ms. Schallheim,
Aye.
Ms. Dent,
Aye.
Ms. Hamdowie,
Aye.
Dr. Tobin,
Aye.
Ms. Ellis,
Aye.
Mr. Silkworth.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, item 7.04, Employment of Foreign Nationals, Code GD.
All right, the superintendent recommends approval of policy GD, subject to final correction for style and format, employment of foreign nationals. We'll pass it back to Grace.
Thank you, Dr. Bedell. Policy GD, Employment of Foreign Nationals, was last revised in 2008 and is being updated for style and formatting and to remove the requirement that teachers obtain tenure before they're eligible to be sponsored for permanent residence status. And with that, I'd take any questions you may have.
Okay, I'm seeing none. Ms. Howe?
Ms. Corkadell,
We did have a motion and a second.
Oh, okay, yeah, we do need a motion, yes.
Move that this policy be adopted pending
Style and formatting.
Style and formatting, thank you.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, Ms. Howe?
Ms. Corkadell,
Aye.
Ms. Schallheim,
Aye.
Ms. Dent,
Aye.
Ms. Hamdowie,
Aye.
Dr. Tobin,
Aye.
Ms. Ellis,
Aye.
Mr. Silkworth.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, item 7.05, students with known anaphylactic allergies or who are perceived to be having symptoms of anaphylaxis, code JECA. Dr. Bedell.
Thank you, Mr. President. The superintendent recommends approval of policy JECA, subject to final correction for style and format.
As a reminder, this policy is being revised as the result of the passage of House Bill 78 in 2023, which required the State Department of Health and Department of Education to reissue their guidance regarding anaphylaxis. And reviewing our current policy, staff did not make any substantive changes. However, the regulation will be updated as well. And I'll take any questions you may have.
Ms. Schauheim.
Thank you. So I know that this just relates to the previously adopted policy on food allergies,
Yes, it
which I
does.
brought forth as a policy revision. So this is not a question, just a comment that I wanted to make publicly. In dealing with the regulations with this and with that one, we should really be mindful that using food in our schools as a reward is not always a good idea, especially with kids that have food allergies. This has come to my attention a number of times regarding a few students in District 5, and it's a real big problem. And not only could it cause the exclusion of a child, oh, why don't you just go wait over wherever while we do this, which is not okay. But it also just goes back to just using food as a reward in general. So, and it could be individually wrapped items. It could be, I've heard some nutty stuff that tried to go down at a school in my district last year that was thankfully thwarted. But I really hope that we make this a practice throughout our school system, that's not okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Schauheim. Seeing no more lights, we need a motion.
Move to,
Go ahead.
move to adopt student with known anaphylactic allergies or who are perceived to be having symptoms of anaphylaxis, code JECA.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Seeing no lights, Ms. Howe.
Ms. Corkadell,
Aye.
Ms. Schauheim,
Aye.
Ms. Dent,
Aye.
Ms. Hamdawi,
Aye.
Dr. Tobin,
Aye.
Ms. Ellis,
Aye.
and Mr. Silkworth.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, we're moving on to a policy adoption, third reading, the 7.06 Board Emergency Management Code BL.
Mr. President, the superintendent recommends approval of policy BL, subject to final correction for style and format.
So moved.
Second.
So I hear a motion and a second. We do have some lights. Ms. Ellis.
I just want to ask, Mr. President, after we vote, if I could just make a quick remark. After we vote.
Okay. Ms. Corkadell.
Thank you, President Silkworth. I see we have our partner who helped us develop this policy with us, our Office of Emergency Management Director, Ms. Emmerich. I just wanted to applaud you for a minute and thank you so much for your partnership, which will continue as we actually implement the policy. But I just wanted to take a moment to first thank you. She was also here during the second policy reading. Unfortunately, we were a little behind in our agenda schedule, which for all good reasons. We don't do that willy-nilly, of course, to folks, but did have to depart before the actual conversation. But I just want to thank you for your support for everyone, because being prepared is important. And that is something that is not in front of us each and every day. But needs to be current, be relevant, and meet the needs of our community always. And so I think this is a good step in the right direction in the modernization of how we operate and how we think about operating. So thank you to my colleagues and everybody else. Mr. Silkworth was my co-conspirator as a committee member on emergency management, and also put in a tremendous amount of work, as well as supporting it and making sure that we're following all the steps and including all the right folks. So thank you very much. And Dr. Bedell and your staff. Grace has experience with this particular domain, and so it was so energizing, and to be able to work with someone who has not just expertise in education policy, but specifically in emergency management, which is a unique beast in and of itself. So thank you all very much. And I look forward to making the vote on this after my colleagues have completed their comments and questions.
Ms. Stanton?
So I want to first of all thank the committee. Thank you. I want to thank the committee for doing this. I think to echo Ms. Corkadale sentiments is how important this is. I think that although I wasn't here on the board when COVID occurred, the idea of having to randomly move this entire organization to a remedial site and be able to function is so very important. The one thing that I do look forward to is, I don't know who the president is going to put on these 4 committee members, but I will definitely volunteer to be one of those. Because I believe that the functional exercise portion of it is just as important as this policy. So thank you all for bringing the policy forward, and thank you, Grace, Ms. Wilson, for getting it through. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Stanton. So I believe we do have a motion and a second, and we need to take the vote. Ms. Howe?
Ms. Corkadale?
Yes.
Ms. Shulhan?
Aye.
Ms. Dent?
Aye.
Ms. Hamdawi?
Aye.
Dr. Tobin?
Aye.
Ms. Ellis?
Aye.
Mr. Silkworth?
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, so Ms. Ellis?
Thank you. I wanted to go ahead and have the vote so I could memorialize the moment that we actually adopted a policy on this, because it's pretty actually astounding that we didn't have a policy on this, and then a pandemic comes along and we realize. So anyway, I want to thank Ms. Corkadale for bringing a policy to the committee, and Ms. Emmerich, your commitment to the school system and to this policy is very evident. Thank you for all of your input and participation and coming to our meetings to see this through. So I just wanted to thank you. We have a policy. Appreciate it.
So before we move on, Ms. Corkadale, this has been, it's been your baby for a long time. And so I'm going to give you the opportunity to have final comments.
Thank you, President Silver. I was just telling Melissa, it's so endearing. Good governance takes time and dedication and hard work. And so oftentimes when you see these readers, before these readers even show up, there is a lot of hard work. And we know the consequence when we cut corners. And this is one arena we definitely don't want to. I will say that I so appreciate Ms. Dent's offer, and I think she will definitely add value. Every single government agency has to be prepared to take care of its community and respond in an emergency. And so this is definitely a team effort, and this just isn't the board's policy. This is a policy that makes sure that the board is prepared to respond to the community's needs. And in our case, it's education. But we also learned, when we're talking about those food service workers were the reason that our county was able to feed more students than anyone, not just in the state of Maryland, but in the region. And that includes those other larger districts to ourselves. And when we needed something unsnagged, we advocated for it. We did the hard work together as a team. And that was through leading in a recovery environment that is structured and allows for the opportunities for us to collaborate. And so this just furthers that effort. And it is an ongoing effort that the community always has to undertake. So, but thank you all so very much. And as Dr. Tobin had mentioned, I don't know if necessarily on mic, that we definitely hope that we never have to actually implement those plans. But if we do, we know we will be better prepared so that our community is better prepared to face those challenges in those days ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Corkadale. Okay, we're going to be moving on to item 7.07, our 2025 legislative program. Dr. Bell.
Yes, sir. I want to start off, Grace Wilson. Number one, thank you for taking on this position and honestly for the job that you've done in a short period of time, kind of being an army of one. But also for the changes that I think this board and I wanted to see happen in terms of getting our legislative platform out earlier, giving the board an opportunity to process what we're doing. And I know there's not significant changes from last year, but one change that occurred last night was amazing. Bringing a lot of our community members together. There were a number of board members who were in here last night. A number of stakeholders and educators and even students around the piece of legislation that you will talk about that we're trying to get to pass. And just seeing people come together around what could be, I left here yesterday feeling really good. And not only that, your attention to detail around research, the slide deck that you put together, it tells me that you are taking what we need to get done very seriously. So I wanted to just start off with that and pass it over to you now to take us through where we are. And it's important for the board and the community to know that this program, again, this is an overview, but we will bring this to the board to take action on September 18th. So that gives the board opportunities to weigh in on it well in advance. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bedell. And while I may look like an army of one, I do want to thank Maggie Goswich, the sports specialist in my office, and Mara Babb, who's interning with my office, who's a senior at Crofton High School this year, because they are instrumental into making sure that I can do this work. And the work group presentation last night was a collaborative team effort as well. So I thank my colleagues for their collaboration. So for the record, I'm Grace Wilson, Senior Legislative and Policy Specialist. The 2025 legislative program is before you this afternoon. We are well in the works for preparing for the 2025 legislative session. As Dr. Bedell said, I will highlight a few key changes for you this afternoon, and that the program will be back before you on September 18th for final approval and adoption. Your legislative priorities, we are not making any recommended changes from the last year. We did add some language to the second priority regarding capital funding for pre-K to acknowledge legislation that was passed last year that would allow state funding to be used for pre-K programs that are leased, but continuing to advocate for dedicated funding for capital expansion of pre-K. The document was also updated throughout to reflect the recently adopted strategic plan and the mission that every student can belong, grow, and succeed. Additionally, on page 8 in the academic program section, achievement section, in light of the literacy policy that has been proposed by the State Board of Education and the Maryland State Department of Education, staff has recommended adding language in support of adequate and equitable funding for programs and resources to support acceleration for students who are reading below grade level at the elementary level. On pages 29 and 30 within the special education section, you will see that there have been numerous revisions proposed by the Division of Specialized Instruction and Early Intervention Services. These changes reflect the work that AECPS is doing to bolster specialized instruction for our students. And finally, on pages 31 and 32 in the student nutrition and health section, the program has been updated to reflect the AACPS's involvement in a new group, the Anne Arundel County Food Council, which supports the work to reduce food insecurities throughout the county. And I'd be happy to take any questions you may have regarding the legislative program generally or the changes proposed by staff.
Okay, Michelle Heim.
Let's not forget the more than 20 of us that were online last night as well, including several elected officials.
Yes, Ms. Schauheim, we had a whole bunch of people online too. You're absolutely right.
Yes.
I thought what I said was inclusive of everybody who participated. Thank you for that,
Thanks.
though.
In terms of the legislative program, this body of work is always very impressive to me. I reviewed I read the whole thing from beginning to end again, and I just think that these changes, although we're not going to take action today, are all very useful, and I'm very supportive. So I just wanted to thank you and your team and everyone involved for their hard work.
Of course.
Thank you.
Ms. Ellis.
Thank you. Yes, first, I echo the sentiments, Ms. Wilson, on the work you put into this. This is so refreshing. Every year I have commented on how I did not feel that the board had an opportunity to really collaborate on this. And so this is one of the most important things we do. Legislation impacts our students on a daily basis in such a big way. People don't often realize until the legislation is passed and you see the changes that are made because of it. So, just like we go through a process with the budget and with policies, this needs to be given its time as well. So I just want to express my appreciation. I'm sure I will be reaching out with questions as I'm processing and perhaps suggestions, but for now, I just want to thank everyone.
Of course, our pleasure.
Ms. Crocodile.
Thank you, President Silkworth. Thank you, Dr. Bedell, and Ms. Wilson. I too echo chamber the sentiments of appreciation. This is a large undertaking, and I just wanted to say I definitely appreciate the addition on the literacy piece and the funding. Having been advocating for that, I think it's important, and I just want to reiterate that, a lot of times one of the most common questions I get asked, no matter what it is that we are opposing of the legislature, when it relates to fiscal impacts and the funding reliability and a stable funding mechanism that we can actually operate under. So we don't end up with abandoned projects and having to go in and do mitigation work. And so oftentimes people are like, yeah, but you can't oppose everything just on money. Well, if I don't have the resources, I don't have the resources. And so that, whether we're talking about the maintenance of effort or of how we are going to launch some very bold and I think will be successful project enterprise level changes to the curriculum and how we teach also. Not just what we are teaching, but also how we are teaching. It is necessary and the data's in. So as we move forward, but I just want to say thank you so very much because I don't think people realize that there's all this other stuff that happens when session's not in session. And our, AIB continues to meet along with the state board, our state superintendent. And so decisions are made year round. So keeping this current and being more in sync and being able to get into the pre-file space of work groups and such, I think that is so very important. And as a participant last night, I got to say, we have a very, very good, rigorous model to ensure that we're getting the right input to perform to the legislation piece and also will prepare us to figure out all those other little details after we have actually achieved it. But those details are, of course, something that you want to go through. So thank you very much.
Of course.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Crocodile. Moving on to item 7.08, third-party project, Eastport Veterans Park. Dr. Bedell.
All right. Thank you, Mr. President. The superintendent recommends approval of the Eastport Elementary School Veterans Park third-party project.
So moved. Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Dr. Tobin.
Yes, I just want to say that I'm delighted to see this project coming to fruition. I know it's been a long process, and I really appreciate the collaboration between the city, the schools, Eastport Elementary, and the work that's been done by this veterans group in Eastport to raise the grant money and make sure that this space is fully what it should be, and so that our students and all the Eastport community has an opportunity to enjoy that space, and that space fully reflects what it's supposed to do, which is to remind everyone of the importance of honoring those who have served their country. And so I just want to thank the city of Annapolis and all the others who were involved, and say that I'm looking forward to seeing the results, and much appreciated. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tobin. So we have a motion and a second. Seeing no more lights, Ms. Howe.
Ms. Corkadel,
Aye.
Ms. Schallheim,
Aye.
Ms. Dent,
Aye.
Ms. Hamdowie,
Aye.
Dr. Tobin,
Aye.
Ms. Ellis,
Aye.
Mr. Silkworth.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, we're moving on to item 7.09, fiscal year 2025 comprehensive maintenance plan. Dr. Bedell.
Thank you, Mr. President. The superintendent recommends approval of the fiscal year 2025 comprehensive maintenance plan.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Ms. Corkadel.
Thank you, President Silkworth. I just wanted to comment. I know that Blueprint has changed the criteria in part of how we think about facilities, how we are upgrading them, and maintaining them, and what that looks like in its scope. I just wanted to know if, because we know that obviously a new school, that there's that. But when we're talking about the maintenance and upkeep, the backlog of that, having to do, significant systems upgrades and maintenance on it, are there any challenges that we anticipate as a result of the new model that the IAC, or soon to be former IAC, would have operated under?
I'll let our experts answer that. Let the experts answer that one. I think I have the answer, but
I think I know what the answer is probably
I-
going to
I
be,
know
but
what
I
it
want to
is
make
too.
sure that I know all the
Yep.
spaces that our impact is occurring. Yes.
Sure. So this particular document really addresses existing building and the existing infrastructure that's in place and our need for capital renewal on that. The longer range 10-year plan, formerly known as the MGT study, will really dive into more the long range capital improvements that need to be made to address Blueprint and provide a little bit more equity into construction projects for the next 10 years.
Okay. And the other reason I asked this question, because it can be challenging for the general public to mistake upgrading an HVAC system to, in a better, more efficient way, support the building versus some of the other things, because some of the funding coexists and is actually coming from the same funder. So I do appreciate that differentiation. So essentially, we need to make sure that these spaces are a separate conversation from the actual facility enhancements, as well as to meet our needs of growth and how we deliver education services in general needs to stay a separate conversation, and the maintaining of our existing facilities, correct?
Correct.
Thank you very much, sir.
Ms. Schallheim.
Yes, I'm sorry. It's not a question. It's more of a statement. And I'm quite sure I say something along the same lines every year. The amount of money that it would take to do the maintenance backlog is just absurd and keeps going. And the fact, and we need to really push this with our funding partners, because you have to spend money in order for the problem not to get worse, to then cost more money later on down the road. So I'm just putting that out there on the record. Like, if we spend the money now, then it's not a roof and when like things go wrong. So that's just a comment. I'm sure you agree.
I do.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, so is this a motion for us for this? Yeah, okay.
I think it was motion and seconded.
Okay, so do we have a motion?
We already.
Or we already have, ready to go then? Any more discussion?
None.
Ms. Howe?
Ms. Corkadel,
Aye.
Ms. Schallheim,
Aye.
Ms. Dent,
Aye.
Ms. Hamdowie,
Aye.
Ms. Frank, Dr. Tobin,
Aye.
Ms. Ellis,
Aye.
and Mr. Silkworth.
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0.
Okay, so we're moving on to item 8.01, review item, award of contracts. Are there any concerns? Okay, seeing none, we're going to be moving on to public comments on non-agenda items. This is one of the opportunities that the board provides to hear the views and receive the advice of community members. The members of this board appreciate hearing from interested citizens. As appropriate, we will refer your concerns to the superintendent for follow-up. While we encourage public input on policies, programs, and practices within the purview of this board and the school system, this is not the proper forum to address specific student or employee matters or to comment on matters that do not relate to the public education in Anne Arundel County. I remind everyone that any inappropriate personnel remarks, or other behavior that disrupts or interferes with the conduct of this meeting are out of order. Persons who otherwise disrupt or disturb this meeting will not be allowed to continue their remarks and will be asked to leave the meeting. It is not the board's general practice to engage in question and answer sessions with speakers. For the record, please give your name before speaking. Handouts should be given to the board assistant. I ask that speakers observe the 2-minute clock. A yellow light will shine when you have 30 seconds remaining, and a tone will sound when your time has expired. Please conclude your remarks when you hear the tone. If you continue after your time has expired, the microphone will be turned off. It could also be turned off if a speaker addresses specific student or employee matters or are commenting on matters not related to public education in Anne Arundel County. And so we have one individual that has chosen to speak on 2 separate non-agenda items. So Mr. Chuck Thompson. Mr. Thompson, you'll be speaking first on new Title IX rule.
Chuck Thompson, Pasadena. Which one I'm speaking on first?
The new Title IX rule.
Oh, yes, thank you. Good afternoon, President Silkworth, members of the board. During my testimony on August 21st, I highlighted some major provisions of the new Title IX rule changes, which were effective August 1st. And the horrible outcomes associated with this rule. But more importantly, I requested that you speak up by initiating engagement with the public if you see something that could harm our students. The school system's position is to fully comply with this law. My position is morals are above laws. The latter is fundamental to American value system. In the Declaration of Independence, it states all men are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. The flow goes from the Creator, Judeo-Christian values, to the people, to a subset of society, which is the government. A perfect illustration of what happens when morals are not above the laws exists right outside this boardroom. In the lobby of this building, you have a picture of Sarah V. Jones, who from 1926 to 1964, as the plaque states, was supervisor of colored schools in Anne Arundel County. Because of Jim Crow laws, this was not a good error. So I ask again, please examine these new rules and help create public awareness and facilitate deliberations of the unintended consequences of complying with this new rule. The student body has many challenges in front of it. Please do not allow more disruptions to their development. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. And now Mr. Thompson will be speaking on non-agenda item 2024-29 strategic plan.
Thank you again. Chuck Thompson, Pasadena. Good afternoon again. I read through the 2024-2029 strategic plan and thought it was a good integration of aspirational goals. An additional goal that needs to be addressed is morality and how it leads to living a good life. If you read the New England Primer or the McGuffey readers, this subject was an integral part of America's early education system. The achievement of human flourishing in a healthy and civil society, you need to learn how to self-govern. This is recognized in America's organic laws. These laws can be found right up front of the United States Code, which is the official codification of statutes of the federal government. One of the 4 organic laws is the Ordinance of 1787. This ordinance chartered a government for the Northwest Territory and provided a method for admitting new states into the Union from the territory. In particular, Article 3 states, and I quote, religion, morality, and knowledge being necessary to good government and the happiness of mankind, schools and the means of education shall forever be encouraged. This principle is part of America's heritage and is glaringly missing from the strategic plan. Knowledge without guardrails and morality is not conducive to a thriving civil society. I recommend you find a way to incorporate the teaching of morality and virtue into your strategic plan. Nothing prohibits you from incorporating the historical and cultural role of religion and the morals in your curriculum. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. So,
Yeah, I just, I know the camera's always on me as a superintendent, and I know I was shaking my head up here because I just received news that there was a high school shooting in Appalachia High School out in Winder, Georgia. 2 people murdered, 4 injured. And I just ask that we put that school district in our thoughts. I'm tired of the shootings. They impact us even though we are miles and miles away. I'm tired. So I just ask that we keep that district in our thoughts. And so I want to make sure, that reflects properly, that I wasn't shaking my head because you were coming up to speak or anything, okay?
thank you, Dr. Bedell. Okay, so that does conclude our public comments on non-agenda items. Do we have a motion?
Mr. President, I move that the board go into closed session to consult with counsel to obtain legal advice on a legal matter and to conduct collective bargaining negotiations or consider matters that relate to the negotiations.
Second.
Do we have consensus? We do. Thank you all. Have a great afternoon.